Ben Johnson just sent a message to his team, especially the wide receivers. And you talk about how those wide receivers need to step up the season or expose Caleb Williams a little bit. We're talking a little bit about that and why the sportsbook are starting to doubt the Chicago Bears. Third in the NFC North coming up. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. So I want to start off with Ben Johnson's comments, right? So Ben Johnson is clearly showing he ain't playing with us this season, and he's not playing about the Chicago Bears and what they could be this season after. We heard a number of things that Ben Johnson said in this 30-minute session at the NFC Coaches Breakfast. We got a number of takeaways from it. First, he said that he found out about Drew Dahlman's decision to retire about mid-February. He said the team quickly pivoted towards Garrett Bradbury, who they believe is going to fit them like a glove. So it seems like the Bears, they weren't made that aware of Drew Dahlman's situation much before we were, right? Also said in regards to the left tackle position, saying this, there's a lot of uncertainty there. He said he's not sure that the Bears will have Ozzie Trapillo during the 2026 season at all, which, is kind of things that we've heard before. We heard that he could return late in the season or they can just let him stay out there. But he did say that Braxton Jones is up to 310 pounds. He looks, quote unquote, yoked when he said he saw him come in and sign his contract during free agency. And he said that Braxton Jones is eager to get his career trajectory back on track. Here's what I'll say about that. You want to find motivation where you can. Braxton Jones still has his fans in the fan base. He still has his detractors in the fan base. I don't sit necessarily as a detractor. I don't believe in Braxton Jones. I guess that makes me a detractor, but he's going to have to show it, right? And like I've said on here, I've said on Bull Central, the weirdest thing in sports is when people like to root against players that wear their uniform just so they can be right about something. No, I want everybody in a Bears uniform to show and prove, right? So if Braxton does come back and have a bounce back year, get to the trajectory on point, great for him. It's going to help the Chicago Bears. I want whatever is going to help the Bears win more games. But as we know, with Dan Rouchard, if Braxton does not bring it, he's going to sit his ass down. And so I have a lot of faith in that, right? Then let's get to the part that kind of is even more. Ben Johnson talked about how he wasn't happy with the offensive staff and how they didn't coach wide receivers to get open enough. And he put an emphasis on getting back to fundamentals in OTAs, on catching the ball and address the drop issues. Which brings us to another set of things in this, right? I'm going to kind of bounce all back and forth based off Ben Johnson's comments. But, one of the things that is clear, and Ben Johnson has said this since the end of the season, is the drops weren't there, right? He talked a little bit about the DJ Moore situation and the loss of DJ Moore and losing a veteran presence in the locker room, right? He does hope that, with Khalif Raymond coming in, the experience that he can bring, even though he's not going to have the biggest role, how that helps this team. But Ben Johnson has been very vocal in regards to Rome Odunze and how much Rome needs to be better, right? Saying this, that's something we'll talk about. I don't think that was a thing for him coming out. I don't want to speak it into existence. There's something we're going to emphasize in the spring, getting back to basics. He said that about Rome Odunze specifically and getting Rome Odunze to bounce back. Now, I don't think Rome's season was as bad as some people made it out for, right? I do think that Rome started off the season on a great path, and then injuries happen. And, you can still label it a sophomore slump if you want to, and I think there's still some fairness in getting to do that. But, when you look at the Bears and with the wide receiver situation, right, we have a wide receiver room that's built for the future and for now. And if the Bears get another wide receiver in this draft, when you look at it, you got Luther Burden, Rome Odunze, Colston Loveland, who's going to do a lot of lining up as a receiver. You got Khalif Raymond coming in, right? The fact of the matter is that this is one of the youngest wide receiver cores in the game of football now with the exit of DJ Moore. And if you add another young rookie wide receiver to this that you draft in one of the later rounds, it's going to be there. Now, the longevity play is there for the Bears' success, and no doubt about that, right? So when you look at that, and you look at the offensive line and the young studs that we got on that offensive line, and Darnell Wright and Ozzie Trapillo, whenever he's able to get back to it, the Bears are set up for future success, but they have to eliminate, Caleb Williams and the underthrows and overthrows and the misses. The wide receivers with the drops. These are two things that we have to try to do our best to eliminate in totality this upcoming offseason to get it to the spot that we need to get it to be the team that can be even more crisp offense. You look at how good the Bears offense was. Imagine if you eliminate even half of those drops or half of those missed throws or both of those things. Imagine those things and how much better this offense is in a position at going into the next season. And so it's important that you find a way to do that. And, I love that Ben Johnson is very focused on this. He said it at the end of the season presser. He's saying it now again at the meetings, and he's keeping the same energy going. We need better performance out of our wide receivers. We need to eliminate the drops. We already know the standard that Ben Johnson has for Caleb Williams and wanting him to get to over 60% completion percentage. I think he said even aim for 70, but that's rare air to get into. But you want to be able to do that. So and that's part of what's going to be on the new offensive coordinator Press Taylor as well. And Ben Johnson talked really glowingly about him also, saying this, that Press Taylor is the most organized coach I've ever been around. And he said that his library of plays for how to beat different defenses is how he organizes information, and it's a benefit to Ben Johnson. And that's what Press Taylor is going to do in that new role. So, it's good to see. But one of the things that I love so much about Ben Johnson's message here is that Ben Johnson doesn't want complacency. So he does not want that at all. He says that the coaches are hyper vigilant to not allow any complacency going into next season. We heard this from Ben Johnson before. Last season is last season. You don't get to necessarily build off that success in the way that Ben Johnson looks at it. You have to learn what you need to learn and get to it, and we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen here. So, Ben Johnson laying out that expectation for his team, that expectation for what he wants to see is from an execution standpoint. These are the things that we love about Ben Johnson. These are the reasons why Ben Johnson, as the Chicago Bears head coach, there's a reason for a lot of faith in it because he holds a different standard. No complacency allowed. And so he internally is putting more pressure on this team to perform the way that they need to perform because guess what? There are going to be teams out now trying to expose, quote unquote, Caleb Williams. There are going to be teams that are out there trying to expose Ben Johnson. You have to be ready. You have to be prepared for what's coming in 2026. You snuck up on teams in a way, right? Both in your fourth quarter performance and the fact that a lot of people didn't have a lot of hope for the Chicago Bears last season. Ain't none of that now. You won the NFC North. You won one of the deepest divisions and toughest divisions in all of football. Ain't no more sneaking up on nobody, right? They're going to be a target on your back. And we'll talk about what the sportsbook are saying and the disrespect around the Bears for that, right? But, overall, I say this. What in the more and more we hear from Ben Johnson, the fact that we're ramping up, you're going to start hearing more from Ben. You're going to hear more from Ryan Poles as well leading into the draft. But this one quote from Ben Johnson really stood out to me where he said this. It's been a long offseason in terms of you go downtown or you go somewhere and everyone's putting you on the back and telling you what a great job you did. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it anymore. All right. It was great for the first week, but now our sights are turned and we got a monumental task at hand because this division only got better so far this offseason and we still have the draft to come. So our guys, we got back to work just like we did a year ago. It doesn't get any easier. It's going to continue to get harder. They're going to feel that pressure from the coaching staff. So when we get it to these games in the fall, we're going to be ready for it. I love hearing that from my head coach. Ben Johnson isn't somebody that's resting on any laurels here at all. He's not resting on any monochrome of success that we had last year as a team. Ben Johnson's basically saying, listen, what we did was cool. It was cute, but it ain't enough. And we can't allow that to make us think that it's enough because if we think that it's enough and we rest in that, it's not going to be shit. We're not going to do shit because every team is improving around us. And unfortunately, so far, the Bears have made some really good moves in free agency, but a big part of how much better this team is going to be is going to come down to the NFL draft and how much you can nail these premium picks that you have, right? And so you look at the lack of accountability that existed here during the Matt Eberflus era. That was a lack of accountability that was loud and that we all felt, and that the moment that Ben Johnson came in here and almost his first presser, you knew that there was going to be a different level of accountability. Then we went through this season and you saw not only how accountable the players held the coaches, but how accountable the coaches held themselves to the way that they wanted to coach and develop this team. That is how you get to the next level. And that's what this team is really doing. So Ben Johnson is mentally preparing this team. He's mentally preparing himself as well. And he's setting the standard and the goal that we don't rest on any success. And it's been a long time since the Bears had that as an organization, and where it feels like we're not resting on any prior success or hanging our hats on what our reputation was before or whatever. Like, the Bears have this is a different step that the Bears are in right now. And we got to get that. So I think when you look at this, like Ben Johnson, also some of the things that he talked about, to get back on his bullet points, right, is he talked about how they're changing the standard in what is going to be for their defense, right? He said, I started off this saying he wasn't happy with the offensive staff, but he also talked about how, the it factor that Kobe Bryant is bringing into this team, right? And then talked about how challenging it was to build relationships with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon because of how hurt and how in and out of the lineup they were, right? And that's good to see. That is really good to see that Ben Johnson is admitting that, because, you can have a relationship with a player based off them being in practice, them being off the locker room. But it's different when you're in those battles and in those war with those guys. Kyler Gordon never really got going. Jalen Johnson was never really himself, right? And so even Ben Johnson saying that, hey, I see the lack of relationship that I built with these guys and how that impacted the Bears' defensive identity last year. We didn't have one. Outside of takeaways, we didn't have an actual defensive identity as far as style of play other than takeaways, right? And that now the Bears have basically removed the guys that got the most takeaways to actually focus on a more functional actual offense or defense, right? And so, yes, Kobe Bryant is a really big signing by the Bears. Devin Bush is a really good signing, right? And Ben Johnson said this. It's something that Dennis Allen brought up as we were going over self-scout over the last month. And half was basically the best defenses usually have 2 or 3 trained killers. That's the word from Ben Johnson directly. You usually don't have 11 of them, okay, but you've got 2 or 3 that are tone setters that can really elevate the play of everyone around them. When we watched the tape, we felt that jumped off when Kobe was on the field. He's a guy that comes out, whether he's playing quarters, playing the post, playing down in the box, he's coming down, and if he sees somebody, he's looking to light them up. You know what? I love hearing that. Now, there are some things with Kobe Bryant in regards to missed tackles, and that is a legitimate thing there, and we'll get to that, right? But it does seem like the Bears are trying to build an identity with that defense now. Again, that is more of a sustainable identity, more so than just relying on takeaways, right? And that's what this team was missing. Now, Dennis Allen has to put his imprint on that. And it's good to hear that Ben Johnson talking about it, but Dennis Allen has to make sure that this defense, in building this identity, that at the forefront is how he wants us to execute as a team. And if we do that, things are going to look good for the Chicago Bears. But, it's those things like trained killers is a great thing to hear about, right? Like, it's a way that you know that the tone that you want to set with your defense. And that's what the Bears really didn't do a lot last year. They didn't really set a tone. Takeaways and getting turnovers, getting interceptions, all those type of things. It was great. It was fun because the Bears did it in some very clutch moments, and they did it so consistently that I don't think it's fair to try to call it a fluke either. But you need more than that, right? How do you get to the quarterback? How do you put pressure on teams? When teams come across the middle, are they worried about coming across the middle against you, right? Or running backs looking at when they get to the second level that they know they got to get ready, right? Like, these are type of things that you want to put opposing offenses in a mindset to where they have to think about what you're going to do. The Bears didn't do that last year. It was takeaways, right? And so I love that Ben Johnson is basically saying, hey, this is something that our defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, noted early into this process when we get into this offseason, and now we're trying to execute that process. With Ryan Poles, his signings, all these type of things, we're trying to execute it the best way that we can so that we can bring forward a defense that's going to have more to it than just takeaways. And you got to love to hear that from Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson really does, as much as he's an offensive-minded head coach, right? And you can never take that away from him. He is an offensive-minded head coach. But the fact of the matter is that this is still a guy that, as a head coach, you have to have your finger on the pulse of everything. And Ben Johnson is showing that he is staying connected with all those things. He's staying connected with all sides of the ball. He's talking to his defensive coordinator because then again, also, how well you improve your defense is going to improve how well you are preparing this offseason, right? Because when you're going up against a defense that has trained killers on it that, are going to try to kill their own teammates, but you want some of that. Like, one thing with me and being a former football player myself is that you always understand when you have those fights that kind of break out, right? And that tension that builds when you're going through training camp and stuff like that, a little bit of that you want. Of course, you don't want to get into a too toxic of a place, but a little bit of that you want because, again, that's getting yourself mentally prepared for the battles that you're going to go through. And when you go through those battles sometimes and you piss each other off in practice, you know that when you get to war, hey, these guys are going to do their side of the ball. You want an offense that when they be like, damn, we stalled out on that one, but our defense got our back. They're going to go out there and get us good position. You want a defense that looks at it and says, listen, we got to stop here. our offense is going to go put some points out on the board so that we can keep putting this pressure on this team. That's what you want. And that's what we need a lot more of this upcoming season for the Chicago Bears than what we had last year with this team. Now, if we get it, great, right? And that's up to Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen and Ryan Poles to make sure that we get to that spot and we achieve that. And let's see if we can this season. Like I said, I'm not down for counting out the Bears. Show and prove. That's really where I'm at when it comes down to it. Show and prove. Whatever you show, whatever you prove, I'm going to believe it with my eyes. And this Bears team, this coaching staff, this front office, they've been doing a lot of showing here over the last year. So they have my faith that they're going to be able to do it again, and we're just going to see, and we're going to ride it out this season, right? With that said, though, not everybody is as drinking the Kool-Aid for the Chicago Bears, and that we already know the national media, the Chicago Bears, there's always been a thing there. There's always going to be a thing there. It just is what it is, right? But when you start looking at how the sports books are touting the Chicago Bears, it's an interesting thing. The Bears, who won 11 games last season, defeated the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round last season as well to move on. This all happened with a first-year head coach, Ben Johnson. And if a lot of y'all are keeping the same energy, a lot of y'all said, hey, we're going to win 6 or 7 games this season because it's a first-year head coach, and you take a step back with a first-year head coach. Now, it seems like the Bears are being doubted a little bit. When you look at FanDuel, DraftKings, the fact that right now they have the Chicago Bears third in the NFC North, favoring the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers over the Chicago Bears. Here's the thing that I'll say. I get it to a degree. I get it. The Bears didn't make any splash moves. We lost 6 starters. I get it, right? So I'm not going to sit here in front of you guys and act like that to some degree I don't understand why there's doubt around the Chicago Bears, right? I get that. But here's the thing. We had struggles last year, right? Offensive struggles with drops, missed throws. Those are things that were there. The left tackle position, there's some doubt there. We lost a all-world center in Drew Dahlman. We lost that. We got to replace that. I understand that. You look the number of identity starters that we lost. Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, gone, right? Deshaun Wright, who had a great season with us, gone, right? But I think when it comes to this, that one thing that people are forgetting in a lot of cases is the fact that this is not the same Bears team that you had before. This is not that same Bears team that you looked at before that you could put the offense under a microscope and that's great, right? But this isn't the same team that, has had a lack of coaching. This isn't the same team that has had, that doesn't have the leadership. This isn't the same team that doesn't have its quarterback, right? There are some things that we need to improve in those areas for sure, but third in the division? Now, that can change again after the draft, right? We know that a big part of the Chicago Bears and finding new starters has to come through the draft because of the way that the Bears handled their free agency. So I understand that, man. But the fact is that the Bears, and this is what I said at the beginning to highlight that, we're not getting the benefit of the doubt from nobody, right? We're going to have to go out there and show it. I do think it's a little bit of disrespect thrown towards the Chicago Bears, right? We finished with a plus 22 turnover differential. But with that said, we lost a lot of the guys who got those takeaways from us, right? This defense that the Bears had was a defense that held on. It was bend but don't break for the entirety of the season, and we broke a lot more than what I would like to admit, right? But let's not overlook the fact that Caleb Williams set a single-season passing record in his first year under Ben Johnson with 3,942 yards, breaking Eric Kramer's, that 3,803 yards that stood for longer than most of us have been alive. Don't forget that we had one of the best rookie classes with some of those rookies in Ruben Hippolyte, Shamar Turner, Zay Frazier, not even really playing for the Chicago Bears last year. And all those guys are going to have roles at positions of need this season to show what they can bring, right? So, whether the Bears return as NFC North champions or not, to completely overlook the Chicago Bears and to say that they're going to be third in the division, good. Give us more bulletin board material because for once, the Chicago Bears have a head coach that's going to take that. He's going to see that. He's going to smirk and smile. He's going to go out there and motivate his team to put people in the dirt next season, to put your expectations in the dirt next season, put your doubts in the dirt next season. That's what the goal of this team is. And to come out here and be the best versions of themselves. And I see the doubt. Some Bears fans internally have a lot of doubt about this team. But I tell you what, you look at guys on this roster like Luther Burden, Kyle Monangai, who barely begun to scratch the surface of who they can be in this league. Odunze, we already talked about how Ben Johnson is testing him and wants to see him improve, right? At the end of the day, the success that the Bears had wasn't by accident. You can try to act like it was by accident all that you want, but I have a good feeling that the Bears are going to prove that it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a fluke, that the Chicago Bears were as good as what they were last season. Now we got to go out there and show and prove. And once that happens, let's get through this draft. Let's get through OTAs. Let's get through training camp. Let's get this shit done. Because I tell you what, I'm really ready to hold people accountable to the doubt that they're having about the Chicago Bears this season. I'm really ready to hold people accountable for that. I was so engulfed in the season last year that I didn't pull receipts like I usually would. I'm pulling receipts this year. That's what I'm going to do. So, with that said, we'll see what the Chicago Bears can see. But as you can see, Ben Johnson's ready. He's motivated, and he has his team focused. Now let's see how the Bears take advantage of that. But that's it. That's going to do it for today's episode, man. The Chicago Bears are no longer flying under the radar. It's time to prove that last season was not a fluke. Ben Johnson is already setting a tone for this team. So now I want to hear from you guys. Do you feel like the Bears are being disrespected by being given the third best odds in the NFC North? Let me know what you guys think about that. And how do you feel about the Chicago Bears and getting that identity of trained killers on the defensive side of the ball? Make sure you guys drop your thoughts down below in the comment section. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Make sure you guys are following us at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. So that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.